Hello again, my name is Botman, and for the convenience of the listeners, I will be responsible for further reading of the script. I speak in Orel's name. Welcome to the 7th part of my video series, Madness in the Western World and an Introduction to a Realistic Solution. Objective number 6. Secure our survival and a way to reach power in our Western countries, here in this current world system, or after it collapses. First of all, everything that I talk about here can be done completely legally. It's all just a matter of money, a matter of legal business, and every necessary license we may obtain here in Europe and in North America. We will obey the laws and regulations. We won't be violating them. If something is not possible to be done legally in one country, we will just move in to another country where it is legal. Also, we will be respecting the authority of our national governments 100%, as long as they exist. Secondly, I will present the concept of Farmstadt project, according to my vision of how I would design the inner system and organization to be maximally efficient for any outcomes of the far future scenarios of this system and all possible threats to our way of life and our people, which I was able to predict. Farmstads, as an idea, are designed to provide us with everything that allows us to maintain our civilized way of life after the collapse of this system. This objective will explain in detail, as well as what I meant when I said that every business company in the plan has a dual purpose, including project number 8, a security company, which is directly related to Farmstadt security, of which I cannot explain in this video. This objective will also help you understand why the TradeStrat project will be the most profitable project of all and will finance most of the projects in this operation. As I was saying, the TradeStrat project is a twin brother of Polstrat, and it will be an alternative internet international trade market, which will provide the use of its own cryptocurrency, a currency backed by ideology and our own economy in the future, mostly thanks to our business network cooperation, which we will create through the TradeStrat platform with like-minded business partners from all over the world. It will be our currency, serving our people, our infrastructure, and our cause, and a currency for our own system, a currency for our future. This cryptocurrency will allow us to gain more independence from the current banking system and even the current world market and economy in the long run. But the main reason why our cryptocurrency will become so attractive to people from all over the world is because it will be the only currency in the world which is designed to survive the system's collapse without losing its value. Quite the opposite. It will only gain more value. I will explain the details further in the video. Before I start explaining this project in detail, I will tell you about all the possible political and economic outcomes for the system now, and I will be repeating them near the end of this video as a summary. There will be a few potential ways in which the system could collapse. A deep crisis and the bankruptcy of your country, which will grant us a certain victory. A state collapse or a civil war scenario most likely will grant us a victory. A global economic collapse, we would likely benefit. A global economic collapse combined with a world war. We are going to win, probably with huge losses, but we will save our Western civilization, even if the situation becomes dire, assuming nobody uses some sort of weapon that destroys all human life on Earth. If we achieve this objective on time, in the best case scenario, we will secure the survival of a few million of our people in Europe, North America, and possibly even Australia or New Zealand. This objective of my plan aims to secure the future for our people and traditional Western civilization after any sort of possible collapse. So, now to the explanation. In my video before, I mentioned project number 9, which I named Farms for Organic Food Production. We will open many organic food markets and start mass promoting healthy organic food to generate additional profits and to reinforce the value of our cryptocurrency. That's the official version. All the projects listed in my video with the plan are designed to serve this project as the ultimate solution for saving our people and securing the future of Western civilization. Those farms will have a dual purpose, in the same sense as every other project on my list from the plan. Officially, while the system still exists, they will just be farms, which will specialize in the production of organic food. They will also be used as hotels and training ground for crews and community pioneers. Unofficially, they are the foundations for city-states, similar to the ones in ancient Greece. They were each named Polis. More details will be explained further in this video. The basic necessities needed to maintain our civilization and organization after the collapse are water, food, electricity, and security. The farms will provide all of that, being maximally self-sufficient to operate either before the collapse or shortly after, avoiding any currently existing restrictions which could limit our current possibilities. I don't know how things are in the United States, but being completely self-sufficient in food, water, and power production in most of Europe is currently illegal. So those farms will be prepared and equipped with everything required to deploy any equipment needed to become self-sufficient in a matter of hours or a few days after the initial collapse. It's how we are going to bypass the restrictions with the help of our construction company and a few other projects, which I have already listed in the plan. A single farm structure will be very complex. It will be a mix of futuristic technology and more primitive farming methods. Farmstads will have farms and livestock. Horses will be used largely for work and as the primary means of transportation in order to preserve our supplies like oil for heavy equipment, combat, service vehicles, and other emergency situations. We will also automatize everything possible, thanks to the projects developed in our robotics company, which should make life on the farms that much easier. This system is designed and prepared for the days after any possible collapse. Everything will function legally unless the system ceases to exist. After the collapse, everybody will have to rely on themselves, but if they are lucky, they may be able to rely on their local group of friends, especially after government emergency operations fail to function, which will likely happen after the first few weeks or months after the collapse. Mass starvation, a lack of clean water, and increases in crime is something that the majority of citizens from the majority of our Western countries will struggle with on a daily basis. Add different ethnic groups with various cultures and religious beliefs to this, and it will quickly polarize, escalate, and turn hostile against the more peaceful populations in our Western countries. At the pre-collapse stage, farms will already be divided into both surface and underground sections. On the surface, the characteristic structures will be the farms themselves, with all the barns and basic farm infrastructure. Warehouses will primarily store construction materials, provided by our construction company, which will not only specialize in the construction of maximally self-sufficient buildings with innovative technology, but will also provide machinery for the production of this construction material, which will be stored in the farms in times of stability and during a collapse. A few words about this construction material technology. Imagine you could build a very solid house with walls as durable as a concrete bunker, earthquake resistant, with your own architectural design and size, even a few floors tall, and in a matter of hours or days. A house constructed from ready custom segments for basements, rooms, kitchen, bathroom, stairs, floors, and rooftops, and with fully configurable walls. The walls are not only designed to be very solid, but also fire resistant, as well as being equipped with slots for pipes, cables, and other wires. Assembling a house like this is almost like a building, similar to crafting a structure from giant Lego blocks, if you will. where you choose the components you want, each building section, specific doors, the shape of the windows in each room, even your walls' inner and outer layer design, which could be decorated, or act more as a camouflage for the house to make it look more woodland, for example. Visually, houses constructed with this technology will look no different from typical houses and buildings in Europe, but the mechanical structure of the walls and floors is pure magic. The foundation of such buildings is a segment which is in fact a solid shelter, buried and stabilized in the ground by steel pipes. It's one of the technologies which I have designed and I have planned to use at those farms, to construct additional living quarters, houses in a matter of days, if there is any need for that. This is also why we need this innovative construction company, which I mentioned in my video about the plan. Of course, for bigger buildings, a few fundamental shelter segments could be installed and connected together, creating wider and deeper fundamentals for the structure. I have always seen current techniques as outdated and unreliable in the long run, so I have to find an alternative solution, and I did many years ago. I'm also hoping that more of our wealthy supporters make a pre-collapse investment into the farms, buying land near a specific Farmstadt location, or even investing into infrastructure, which will help us in the coming hard times to save precious time deploying what we need. Except for the farm's main infrastructure and warehouses, every farm should have 2 or 3 large concrete buildings, which will be an upgraded copy of the German World War II Flakturm. For example, the outer walls reinforced with lead plating for better radiation shielding and other reinforcement and security measures in case of any emergency situations. If people don't know what these are, I advise you to check videos on the internet, which will explain the structure of such towers in detail. But the purpose of our Farmstadt sentry turn will be to set up radio towers and produce power and heat for households, as well as locating the emergency power generators below the structure, emergency shelters, and security system command centers for control of the power system as well. The sentry term will be the command centers, emergency shelters, and emergency hospitals. Those fortified structures will become a valuable addition for energy production and our farm security system. Currently, very few modified World War II towers exist in Germany, and they are very efficient in producing electricity and wheat for surrounding households. The farm will have many different sources of power and energy. Primarily, it will be either wind turbines, water turbines, or geothermal energy. A secondary energy source will be solar panels. It is recommended for every building to be equipped with those. The third source will be 2 or 3 emergency power generator stations, which will be located in the basement of the sentry term. Water sources are either from water wells, assuming the groundwater won't be polluted, or we will construct our own water treatment and purification plants, which will be located in the area of Polis. And about the underground section: a garage to store vehicles and heavy equipment, storage areas for vital goods, food and medicine, a medical center, an emergency shelter and living quarters for the farm security crew and the rest of the staff, the Farmstadt headquarters, a seed storage bank. Most of the surface infrastructure, including entire villages, will be constructed after the collapse, if needed, along the road which will be connected separated farms. That's why we will store lots of building material with access to heavy equipment and engineering crews from our construction company in these areas of every polis. So now I will tell you about the farm locations and organization in a post-collapse world. Farms will be constructed in groups of 3, located in distances between 15 to 100 kilometers from each other. Everything will depend on the land that is available for us to use. Each farm should be set up with at least a minimum of hopefully 40 hectares before the collapse and after the collapse of the government. it will start expanding thanks to my expansionist farming strategy. In the first year or two, most of the survivors will be using food supplies stored at the farms to stay alive, before the farms expand into a large size and start producing enough to become fully self-sufficient in food production to feed the population inside. A group of free farms will form borders of Kora, which is the territory of the Polis outside the city property. There will be exactly 6 main roads, which could be constructed after the collapse and, if necessary, connecting all of the farms to each other and with the Polis between them in the future. If it is possible, we will use the entire pre-collapse infrastructure available in the territory of Kora. I designed such a structure to improve logistics and the defensive possibilities of each polis. Keep in mind that most transportation of regular goods will be done by horses and or wood gas-powered vehicles, which is a simple but great last resort fuel for vehicles, similar to how civilian vehicles operated during World War II era in Germany. I know this concept might sound far-fetched, possibly too expensive to construct, especially since we're starting all of this with almost nothing. But I would like to remind everyone that wealthy, influential, like-minded people, even politicians in some cases, will gladly back up projects like this, because they see a chance for survival and a future for their own families. Additional strategic pre-collapse constructions located in the Polis territory will be a local pre-collapse center for the construction company, which will provide additional heavy equipment and construction materials for any new construction projects inside of Polis and the post-collapse organization. A local office for a pre-collapse logistics company, which will not only allow us to legally own local fuel depots with fuel and supplies for after collapse, but also a certain number of cargo trucks will station there and will be prepared for modification after the collapse. Those heavy cargo trucks will be used for transporting heavy assets and also to organize well-protected convoys to exchange supplies and to do trade between each polis. Our own local water purification and treatment plant, possibly a geothermal power plant which will be constructed by the corporation in pre-collapse time. Most survivors with full polis citizenship will be living in the central area of the polis, working at the farms and in industry to maintain our self-sufficiency, but we will still need access to resources, which won't be available for all of the city-states. That's why all the city-states will have to strictly cooperate, even in the far future on intercontinental level, without acting greedy or selfish. Which means trade is not everything. You are all on the same side, created first and foremost to serve our people and their common good, our culture, values, our civilization as a whole. If your city-state has access to oil production or steel production, any other necessary resources which some other polis does not have, then you share. You don't sell, you share, supply each other. You all need to support each other. In times of war or peace, we need mutualism, as a brother would help a brother. If you're looking for a place to safely raise your family in the future, those city-states are your best option. More about polis location. All the farms should be constructed on an elevation not lower than 150 meters, deep in the land, far away from the shore. The possibility exists that sea levels will rise, and of course we want to prevent any natural floods. We still need a reliable water source, either lakes, rivers, or reach deep underground water. Sources should do. Also, every farm location should be as far as possible away from any strategic targets for any side of a future conflict, in case of possible World War outbreak. The idea behind the 21st century polis economy is to secure the survival of our people and to preserve our civilization without the need of oil. You may be wondering, how many people will one polis be able to host? I can only assume here, because everything depends on the development of each farm based on our financial possibilities in the pre-collapse time and other circumstances. But my guess is that during its developmental peak in the distant future, with supporting conditions met, a single polis should sustain a population somewhere between 200,000 to 400,000 people. It's really hard to say. I cannot calculate this because there are too many unknown factors. We will think about this later, while assigning people registered on the Polstrat project into chosen farms, which will already be standing. Also, at the first stage of Polis post-collapse development, citizens and crew will be present in the thousands. I won't be hiding the fact that my plan is not aiming to save everybody. Why? Because physically, while making investment into the preparations, it won't be financially possible for us to set up enough of the farms to accommodate such a large population at an early stage of each farm development without proper political support. The majority of people ignore threats to our civilization, and they ignore the fact that our current way of life won't last forever. It will drastically change in the near future. I think they deserve to be ignored for how irresponsible they live their lives and for allowing our enemies control over our countries. If those people really prefer believing in our treacherous and incompetent politicians and trusting the future and the stability of this world economy, which is currently functioning on a credit, then good luck to them. Maybe some of them will regain sanity and reason someday. Then they will allow sane, independent people to reach power in our countries, who might then attempt to fix the situation. But I highly doubt that. Those ignorant people will be crying for help when this system, which they are so addicted to, fails to function. The size of the farm at the pre-collapse stage of development will depend on the financial possibilities of this corporation in our current system. The corporation should fund at least 12 farms in North America and around 18 in Europe, and maybe 3 extra in New Zealand. Of course, the more we are able to afford, the more Farmstadts we're going to build. And more Farmstadts we build, the more people we can host, and the better chances we will have to preserve our civilized way of life. I really hope that even while buying land for those farms, there will be people, farmers and landowners who will voluntarily offer their support while allowing us to construct these farmsteads on their lands. I'm very sure there are people who own a lot and who will see a chance for the future of their own families in this plan, and they will want to contribute, supporting what I am trying to do. So maybe they will help us voluntarily obtain land, which we will need for these farms. After all, the long-term survival and the survival of this civilization depends on entire communities which will have to maintain both of those objectives. You won't have enough strength to survive or preserve our civilization with just a few families around, not in our modern world. It's impossible. If someone believes that surviving on your own, for example, just with your family, maybe even alone, in the long run will lead you to some sort of happy life and future, I must tell those people that they have the wrong idea about post-collapse survival. People who think like this are very naive. Your survival depends on people, those who are with you, and those who might discover your existence in a post-collapse world, and these people might become a threat to you. I will discuss details about this subject in my other video. But of course we will also have various people joining our ranks, and now we are moving on to a subject about our inner organization. There will be 3 categories of survivors for each polis. Polis citizen first class, number 1. A person who supported us in the pre-collapse time, like-minded people who stood for our Western civilization, our values, and our culture long before the collapse. They were the ones who contributed to the realization of these projects, which will grant them open entry into Polis and grant them access to the most responsible positions after passing through a few simple tests. And if they are registered users of the Polstrat and TradeStrat projects, They will be able to reserve entry for themselves and their close ones before their arrival to the polis. How will the reservations work? Will you have to pay for it? No, it will be free. By participating in the Polstrat project, we will have clear information about your personal political orientation, values, ideas, activity, and history on the website and in communities of which you were a member of. So if you fill in your profile with enough details, we will know your personal skills, which will help us accommodate you faster. We will know what you stand for based on your personal, political, and cultural profile, which will be generated based on the decision choices that you make while performing certain operations on Polstrat. These people will have all the rights of the Farmstadt citizens. Polis citizens second class, number 2. Mostly people unknown in our database, family members of first class citizens, which will be assigned to less responsible duties because we will hold limited trust in these people. Assignment to positions with lower responsibility will be the only main difference between citizens of first and second class, but they still have the same basic rights. Citizens of first class will have to vouch for people who they bring with them and who are not registered in our Polstrat database. Outsiders, number 3. Random survivors with peaceful intentions who want to work for the police in order to survive or simply trade and cooperate with our establishment. Further details about Polis citizens and their rights will be discussed on Polstrat. Every citizen of first and second class will have secured access to water, food, electricity, heat, medicine, and medical care. With outsiders, however, we will try to provide all of those according to our ability and capacity. But in the long run, we won't be able to help all. We simply won't be able to afford it. So thanks to the Polstrat project, we will have information and statistics about different areas in Europe and in the United States with a larger concentration of our supporters and communities which they create locally. Evacuation plans will be designed in case of a collapse. Those people will be organized and prepared to regroup and move out in groups together and make their way to the nearest Polis farm, where they will be expected and accommodated right after their arrival. We will start building the traditional Western civilization on the ruins of the old one, a civilization based purely on our Western and national culture, values, tradition, decency, and morals. But our people always go first. There's no place for equality with strangers. Laws and regulations for each polis will be created before the collapse on the Polstrat platform by the combined effort of Polstrat users. Those who are familiar with the Polstrat project from years ago already know that Polstrat features include mechanics to allow users to discuss, rate, and shape laws and regulations currently used in our countries. We will be able to use the very same mechanics and Polstrat data to create laws, rules, and organizations for each polis on a national level. Since polis consists of 3 farms, it means that each farm will assign ownership to people from any given country. For example, if we prepare a polis in Scandinavia, 3 farms will be shared by people from Norway, Sweden, and Finland. We will apply a similar structure to people in other areas of Europe. I designed small organized power structures for each polis. We will verify this model through Polstrat, combining our minds and creativity. I will also write an early form of our polis constitution, which also will be verified by Polstrat users, and if approved, it will be a universal constitution which provides supreme laws and defines fundamental rights and values for our Western civilization. The constitution should be called a constitution of a civilized society. There is no freedom, there never was, and freedom is an illusion. It's always about who rules over you, who you obey, either passively or because you are forced to. In the system which we will design, We will attempt to give everybody as much freedom as possible based on mutual reasoning and understanding. When we establish our own power structure, I hope we can start to make decisions where people obey and support us willingly. My plan gives us an opportunity to perform very advanced social experiments. Thanks to Polstrat, we will have the ability to combine the minds of the most aware and probably the most intelligent, like-minded people from all over the world in order to design a system that we all live in after the collapse. I think that deep down, all rational people want to be morally good, but they must live in conditions where being good to themselves and the people around them is appreciated by fellow people and the system which they live in. They also must be able to recognize what is morally good and morally bad, what is the wrong and what is the right thing to do. This means that they must share similar views on morality, values, as well as having the same principles of morality or culture, if you will. In our current system, it is not really possible, because this current system is too corrupt and diverse. We normalize and tolerate things in society which are clearly abnormal. Morality is a matter of perspective after all. If we hold the same perspective on what's right and wrong based on the way we have been raised in our culture, principles, and values, we could create something truly good for all of us. The current world is too rotten. People are too selfish, and degeneracy is too common. When you're trying to be a good person in this rotten system, you almost always lose, being used and hurt by others. If we design a proper system through Polstrat, perhaps a miracle could happen, and we can eventually create a society that bases their values on a common ground, supported by self-discipline, honor, and maybe faith in humanity and in your own fellow people will be restored again. Assuming we will ever be able to restore it, to restore an honest kindness, mutual respect, and solidarity. People you are going to work with and their combined strength and develop skills to defend these people will become your comrades, brothers, and sisters. I can't predict exactly what will come out of it, but whatever it is, it's going to be good. At least it will be the best that we could ever have achieved so far in our modern world, because our citizens will have so much in common. We will restore honor among our people, give them reasons to be proud again, while standing united, fighting for what our ancestors have been building for a century. The collapse of the current system will just be a lost battle, but we will still be able to win the war. Nobody will be pursuing us around anymore. If this system does not appreciate us, it's hostile to us, and it's constantly pinning us down. We will go our own way, and we will build our own system. Polstrat will help us in our current system through designing our own hypothetical model of society and state, a post-collapse system. Polstrat will summarize and classify our attitude to specific laws, cultures, traditions, or even religions, and will display our attitude towards welcomed, tolerated, or unwanted values and morality in our societies to organize our like-minded people locally, and it will help us form communities and choose leaders. As I said before, Polstrat will be our national control panel, where through votes and exchanging of opinions, we will help people form ideas and shape the most desired social and political system for the future. Now more about the economy. As I already mentioned, the cryptocurrency, which we will introduce with the creation of TradeStrat, will become a universal currency used in every polis all over the world after the collapse. In the current functioning systems, it will become something similar to Bitcoin, an anonymous alternative cryptocurrency which will be under the control of the TradeStrat market and no other. But after the collapse, on every farm, from the 9th project, in every polis, it will become a physical currency which will be fully exchangeable for almost any goods which will be produced and stored at any Farmstadt. Our cryptocurrency will not only survive the collapse, but will also become more valuable after the collapse, and will be resistant to exterior manipulation, since it will be regulated through the trade-strat market and covered by the value of the goods produced in our own economy. This is how, with time, we create a healthy, debt-free economy. Obviously, food, water, electricity, heat, medicine, and medical care, along with education, will be provided for free to all citizens. But all extra goods like additional building material, means of transportation, electric vehicles, among other things, will need to be traded with our currency, which you may earn by work or just collect your money if you made proper investments into our cryptocurrency in the pre-collapse time. We also must be able to provide security and care for the sick and old. Some people have deadly addictions to different medicines because of organ transplants or other surgeries, and each Farmstadt must be able to not only provide such medicines to those people, but also to produce them in the long run after the collapse. After arrival, every citizen will not only receive accommodations, but also specialized clothing for the summer, winter, and casual work uniforms. For example, free pairs of shoes, which will only be produced for our crews at our survival and military equipment company from the 7th project. Also, identical cars will be provided, as well as equipment for self-defense, which I cannot name in this video. Every farm from the 9th project will have its own orelpolstrat and tradestrat backup servers containing data about orelpolstrat users and accounts from tradestrat, which will allow you to remain an anonymous user, including our currency, which is placed in your anonymous account. So, as a new arrival to any polis anywhere around the world, you will be able to withdraw your money even while not being a registered citizen. It's worthwhile to mention we will try to maintain contact with each farm and each polis through radio communication. Obviously, the internet would most likely not be an option, even if we have a local network in every Farmstadt. Also, in the potential case of a world war, the satellites are one of the top primary targets for each side of the conflict, so they will likely end up destroyed or disabled regardless. Trade with people from the outside will also be done through our currency, which means they will have to have pre-collapsed accounts on TradeStrat or simply earn money from the Polis citizens by working with us. Let's summarize the potential positive outcomes from objective number 6. Deep crisis and bankruptcy of your country. In this situation, our farmers will help to maintain the state economy, help to feed a starving population, and since we were the only ones prepared, we will have been warning people about what might happen through our social media. We should gain support for all the independent candidates with the right ideas and the exchange of government in the nearest available elections. People will become desperate to vote for someone from outside of the establishment, and sane-minded people who will be supported by our media will gain a chance to reach true political power and fight for a better future for their own country and their people. A state collapse civil war scenario. We will be able to save many like-minded people and keep them safe in our enclave on our Farmstadt. And when the worst is over, our like-minded candidates for political positions should have an easy way to reach the top positions of power. After all, we have been the ones warning people and trying to prevent us, and we will have also saved most of the people when the government and army failed to do its job. Global economic collapse. The same situation as the options above. We have been trying to prevent bad things from happening, but we are prepared for it, saving lots of people. Nobody will be able to refuse us a leading position. We should easily gain national support everywhere because people will demand to remove all the old politicians who ruined the country and allowed for world economic collapse without stopping it or at least preparing the country for it. Global economic collapse combined with a world war, mainly unknown. Assuming our farms will remain intact and if we survive the war itself, if there is still the ability to grow food, then things in the long run should be fine and we should reach power or what remains of the old world. In a state of bankruptcy, a system collapse or possible war would give people that expected and unfortunately necessary kick in their bottom, which will make them taste the final fruits of their ignorance, lack of responsibility, and madness which they praise and practice in such overwhelming numbers in our Western countries. We will attempt to help and save as many people as possible, prioritizing those who contribute to our preparations first, of course. We will have all the political support from the masses, while the government will be seen as cowards who escape their bunkers, leaving the people on the surface behind, and as fools who lead our countries into ruins. All my projects, in times of peace, will work and earn money for themselves, giving jobs and contributing to the stable economy. In post-collapse times, they will secure the functionality of our economy and keep people safe and alive. As you all understand now, I designed this plan for both best and worst case scenarios, where we may still attempt to reach power in the system and save our countries by electing sane, independent candidates in the government, or, if we fail within this current system, we will have to go through the collapse of the system first in order to rise. So, who are you going to trust? The luck of your own small local survival plan? Our hijacked governments and puppet politicians who have for years been pushing destructive policies to undermine our Western values, sovereignty, and the destruction of our society? A corrupt people who destabilize our nations, and in case of any national disaster, they offer short-term solutions for show, while on their own they will run and hide in their government bunkers? Or will you trust a realistic plan, which aims not only to secure our temporary safety, but also the future of our entire Western civilization, and the future for our children in this world? The plan which is to unite us and make us strong and prepared for almost anything that the future holds on for us? I believe in honor, and in European spirit, in the power of teamwork and solidarity, because we can achieve everything that I mentioned if we work together. Through support from our legions of aware, responsible people, we cannot fail. We will not fail. If people like you refuse to allow it, through being too passive on this call to action, with the solution for our current miserable situation being handed over to you. Oh, and one more thing. From the ruins of the old world or some underground bunkers, well-organized private armies may appear, attempting to take absolute control over the remaining disorganized survivors. Those forces will easily conquer and enslave small groups and communities of survivors on the surface. But if they try to do the same with anyone from our Farmstadts, they will face equal, if not superior forces, legions, which will be capable of effectively opposing their tyranny. What I am trying to say is that it will be easy for them to conquer and enslave small communities with a few hundred people, but not likely with communities numbering in the thousands. Please consider this possibility as another reason to survive with our people in our Farmstadts, rather than alone or in small groups. As I pointed out so many times, with us you won't be alone. We will be strong together, and you will know in advance what values and principles we stand for, even before the collapse. I am trying to create something big for all of us, in case of worst-case scenarios. But when we work together, when we stand together, we are big. Just look at our history and the achievements of our ancestors. All of this can be done, and I will summarize everything in the next and the last part of this video series.